Like Silicon Valley is like a special place, right? A lot of innovation that we use now, also during this call, comes from that area, right? Uh, and it has a history. There's a reason why that is there. Um, and it's not easy to replicate the culture of Silicon Valley because everybody is want to replicate the Silicon Valley in their own country and so on. It's not like that. It doesn't work like that. But there are elements that you could adopt, of course. But over there, you have this community of venture capital. So it's an ecosystem, right? An ecosystem. It's not just the entrepreneurs that are having a great idea and they want to go to market. There is also mentoring systems, right? University is also close by, right? Stanford University is there, also Caltech, and other universities are there. So there is a lot of, and there is also capital available. So there are a couple of elements that you need to have in the equation for an environment, innovative environment to work. And the venture capitals, they also want to know if they put their money, of course, they want the company to be successful. But they are used to the fact that not all their investments are gonna make it. They're used to the idea, right? So it's for us in Suriname, it's very hard to understand this. I can imagine because you want to maybe save every dollar, but they
It feels
are.
like gambling.
It is a gamble. In a way, it's a gamble. But they are just going. Silicon Valley is going for the unicorns. So you have to become $1 billion company. Otherwise, actually, you're not interesting. You're a loser. I find that too extreme, to be honest. Right? I'm not like that. I'm just saying, they can be a little bit like that. Um, but and I don't think Silicon Valley has all the answers for us because we already live in a world with the big corporation, as you mentioned already before, like the banks, the airlines, the cruise ships, all these oil refinery plants, etc. Those are big capex, capital intensive, industries. And if there is a change in the market, they are like the Titanic that cannot make the turn that easy. So they are too big to fail, as we call it. If they fail, the reason why we call it like that is if they fail, they will drag everybody in their falling, right? And that's why the government is putting money into it. This could be one of the reasons, by the way, because otherwise the whole economy could collapse. This was the case with the banks.
So
Where the airlines is a different thing. I know, for instance, in Suriname now there is, because I follow the news obviously, and I know that people are asked now if they want to leave voluntarily. So that is like downsizing, right? The company is going through a transition, a change, and they are looking to downsize the operation. That is a logical reaction, right? But it's not necessarily going to help the company because we are in a global pandemic. So it's not a local problem. SLM is just one of those airlines that have a lot of problems. Of course, SLM has their specifics, right, and their own history, etc., etc.
yeah, it's
But
being added on top of each other.
it's being added on
Yeah.
top of it, right? And
So
it is easy to say that if a company doesn't make money, you should let it go. I agree in principle, but there could be reasons why you won't do that because you still have to have airlines in your countries to leave the country. Like for instance, I live on an island. I could say, yeah, if these companies don't make profit, they should go bankrupt. But then we never can leave the island. So it's not just it's a complicated with
Yeah, I have a
airlines and
take
yeah,
on this, but I'll
there's a
leave it
bit
for Diego
more that
because
I want to
yeah,
go into venture capitalists.
yeah.
But before I challenge that, because there's already two questions on this. Um, so one from YouTube: how does the title of Chief Philosophy Officer fit in this story? And I guess what is a Chief Philosophy Officer? How does this fit in your daily life?
yes. No, very good question. Thank you for that. To answer that, I have to also go a little bit back in time. So when I was working for these companies like Oracle, later I worked for Forrester Research, and my last corporate job was at Gartner. I was dealing with CIOs, or business leaders. So let's say the C-suite, right, the executive boardroom. Um, and one thing that I noticed is that everybody is looking at the business from their own angle, from their own perspective. which is why they are hired, right? I mean, they're like the finance person is focusing on the finance, the marketing on the market, the CMO on the marketing, and the CIO on the information, the technology, and the CEO is kind of responsible for everything. And so you could also have the chief operating officer and so on. But one thing that I noticed is that and this is where the chief philosophy officer comes into play. The way I see it, it's somebody that has, that is able to look at an issue as a challenge, as a problem, at a challenge, a business challenge, from multiple angles. So like a multidisciplinary approach, kind of. And to be honest, a lot of business decisions are biased decisions, right? And I think that's when I started to think about, the role of a chief philosophy officer is to not having the answers necessarily, but asking the right question in the boardroom with the other C-level people, to kind of make them, understand the bigger picture of why they are doing what they are doing. So not just the how question, how we have to address a specific market, but why, because philosophy is about the why, right? The why question. And why I call it chief philosophy officer and not just corporate philosopher is because, I wanted to let it fall in the realm of the chief, because everybody's like a chief pincher, right? Chief CXO, we would call it. So, that's how I came up with it. I think the question maybe
Did you
is also,
trademark it? Because was there not something else like that? Because you also got the name chief philosopher philosopher .com. So
oh yeah,
I'm
well,
surprised that nobody else did that. So
yeah. So, well, somebody has to be the first, right? So most
yeah,
probably, I'm like Carlsberg, Carlsberg, the beer brand. They said probably the best beer in the world. Probably is the right word in this sentence, right? Because they're not sure, and it's marketing. But in my case, probably, I'm the first chief philosophy officer or somebody that started to call himself or herself like that. And the reason why I know that is because when I came up with that term, I think it was in 2005, I Googled it. There was no hits on it, and the .com was available. So, that's why I decided I'm gonna trademark that and use it as a differentiator also for myself going to the market. So, because it's a conversation starter, right? If I have a presentation somewhere and I give my or I meet somebody and I give my business card and they see chief philosophy officer, of course they will also want to know what that is.